we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision.
Nicole Shanahan, the running mate for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., running as independents, and they're on every single ballot around the country. She made an incredible revelation that she and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are currently contemplating dropping out of the race and throwing all their support to Donald Trump. Now, I want you to hear what she had to say, and then you're going to learn why they're making this decision, and then we're going to discuss whether it's a good idea or not and what it will actually do. Let's start with the big announcement.
You know, there's two options that we're looking at, and one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Walt's presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision.
All right, that's absolutely huge. All right, and understand something. The choice is very clear for them. You either stay in the race and hope that the combined efforts will defeat Kamala Harris, or you join with Donald Trump and defeat Kamala Harris. Either way, the entire argument right now within the RFK and Shanahan camp is what is the best thing for us to do right now to defeat Kamala Harris? Because the one thing we can't afford is Kamala Harris keeping power in the White House. Now, there's more at play here in this decision, and she broke it down a little bit. It's actually pretty smart stuff, because if they reach a certain threshold right now as running as independents in the election, then the way election rules are, they can actually form a political party, which gives them campaign matching funds, the way our laws are set up. And so that's part of this equation here. Watch her explain that.
What my gut tells me right now is that we just have to keep being honest. I got to just keep being honest. I got to keep focusing on what matters the most outside of party lines. I need to focus on a vision that goes beyond November. And if that means that we stay in, and, you know, there's benefits to staying in. If we get over 5% of the vote, we actually establish ourselves as a party. 71% of Americans want a strong third party with a real shot at winning. There's even public funds available if we get over 5% of the vote. So we could get, I think it's like $13.5 million in public funds to keep the party going. And that's, you know, that's worth something. That means that we can position for a real third party election in 2028, where we don't have to go around and spend tens of millions of dollars on ballot access, which means that we can spend all of that time and money campaigning. So, you know.
All right. So a couple of things there. And let me just, because we've seen this story play out before. I'm old enough to remember Ross Perot. Some of you might be too. He ran in 1992. He ran again in 1996, and he did breach that 5% threshold. He started a brand new political party, a third party. Maybe you've heard of it. No, you probably haven't, because it died. It doesn't happen. See, here's the problem. The only reason why RFK Jr. is making any possible strides right now as an independent candidate, and it's on the bubble, it's just barely hitting that 5% threshold, but the only reason is because of him. Ross Perot only got the numbers he got because of him. It's a party of a personality. It's not a party based on actual foundational ideas necessarily. And I'm not saying this in a critical way. I'm just saying that if RFK Jr. right now, along with Nicole Shanahan, qualifies as a third party and they get matching funds and now they have ballot access, and oh, that's great, now we're a viable third party. No, you're not. And when RFK goes away, it all goes away. So no, use the power and influence you've got right now to change this election. You can do that right now, single-handedly, and make a difference. Now, Nicole Shanahan, after appearing on the Impact Theory podcast and breaking with this huge revelation, then the folks at Fox News Night, actually got her on set last night after the DNC presentation with the Obamas, and she expanded on this. And guys, this is a very real thing. And in a minute, I'm going to break down the polls state by state in the battleground polls and show you what an enormous impact this would make in this election. And then we'll discuss how this might affect potentially, if Trump wins with Kennedy's support, what does that mean to the Trump presidency? I mean, how big a say does Kennedy have? Should he have any say at all? Does a conservative Republican want to get in bed with somebody with such sort of radical, non-free market ideas that Robert Kennedy does? Is it worth it to keep Kamala Harris out? These are all the balls in play right now. We're going to break down all of them. First, here's Nicole Shanahan last night on Fox News.
You made some big news today, talking about the Kennedy Shanahan ticket. Does it stay in the race, Nicole? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's Bobby's decision. I came into this supporting him wholeheartedly to win this election. And I have to say, there's only one party that has obstructed a fair election for us. And unfortunately, it was the Democratic Party. They've done everything they can, including creating PACs to prevent us from being able to have ballot access.
Yeah, it's interesting because you were saying that you could stay in and run the risk of Kamala Harris win, or you could walk and you could join forces with Donald Trump. When you say join forces, Nicole, what do you mean specifically?
Well, this idea of a unity party, an idea of us coming around these principles of fighting for liberty in this country, fighting for our children's health. We have the worst chronic health crisis in the world right now. Over 50% of children are diagnosed with some chronic disease. This is unconscionable. And we are willing to work with anyone who is sincere in their endeavor to fix and address this issue.
Do you believe the Trump campaign and Trump himself is sincere? Do you see a home? You talk about this as being Bobby's decision. Do you see a home for RFK Jr. in the Trump administration, Health and Human Services, something to that extent?
I would fully support it. I would fully support a strong partnership dedicated to this issue. A lot of people comment that in his first term, he didn't accomplish many of the things that mothers really were hoping he would do, made some big mistakes around the pandemic. However, I think that he is sincere.
Yeah,
I do.
I think it's interesting because the National Review today kind of agrees with you. It's saying that if you, in fact, join the Trump I'm not saying the Trump campaign, if you pulled out of the race, that it would be more beneficial to the Trump campaign than the Harris campaign. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that it's a tight race right now. I wish that we had a chance to debate, that we had fair representation in the polls. I wish we had a chance to be on stage, because had we likely would have won this election. 71% of Americans want a strong third party option, and we delivered it in terms of ballot access. But they're suing us. The DNC aligned PACs are suing us to get us off the ballots right now. These are frivolous lawsuits. We've had some of the best people involved in our ballot petitions, some of the most precise, signature packages ever submitted to any of the Secretary of States. We've overcome so much to get to this point. So to even be contemplating this is tough. It's a really hard decision, and we don't come to this moment lightly.
All right, we're going to pick that up in a minute, but I want to pull this thread. It's a really important one, and it's really at the crux, the heart of the matter. You see, if there's anybody to blame around here for RFK potentially making this choice to throw all of his support and all of his supporters, which in some states are significant enough to change this election for Donald Trump, if he's on the brink of throwing all of that support to Donald Trump and upending this election, ironically, it's the Democrats, the corrupt, lawfare-loving Democrats like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Obamas, and the Clintons. They'll only have themselves to blame for it, because they're just so clever and they're so smart, and they love using the law to punish their political enemies. We've seen what they've done to Donald Trump, and we saw what they did to Donald Trump in the Clinton campaign when they created the Steele dossier, and then they got the FBI and the Justice Department to use that for a criminal investigation against the sitting president in secret. And now they try to do it to stop Robert Kennedy. We'll go back to the Impact Theory podcast. She expands on this. You need to hear what the Democrats have done. This has not been in the news, but the Democrats have gotten all their big billionaire dark money fundraisers to create super PACs with one goal: to destroy RFK Jr. Listen to this.
Start this campaign, I did not put in tens of millions of dollars to be a spoiler candidate. I put in tens of $millions to win, to fix this country, to do the right thing. I will say that Clear Choice, this PAC, this DNC aligned PAC that was created specifically to take us out, has spent millions of dollars to take us out. They have unfortunately turned us into a spoiler. And we don't want to be a spoiler. We wanted to win. We wanted a fair shot. The DNC made that impossible for us. They have banned us, shadow banned us, kept us off stages, manipulated polls, used lawfare against us, sued us in every possible state. They've even planted insiders into our campaign to disrupt it and to create actual legal issues for us. I mean, the extent by which the sabotage they've unleashed upon us, it's mind-blowing. I mean, we're still learning new ways that they have sabotaged us. I really wanted a fair shot at this election, and I believed in the America that a little girl pledged an allegiance to. And that is not where we are today. And it's not because of the Republican Party taking us out. It is exclusively because of the Democratic Party taking us out. And
that's absolutely huge. And I think she's sincere here. And by the way, notice something here. See, I'm a student of language and how people communicate their ideas in the media. Have you noticed that everything that she's talking about with regard to the campaign is in the past tense? We wanted to win. We wanted a fair chance. We didn't want to be a spoiler. I planned on this and I wanted, it's all in the, they're talking, she's talking like this decision has actually already been made. And I think it's instructive that RFK is nowhere right now. She's the one who's putting that out there. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now. And what she just described there as the Democratic Party's corruption and lawfare and attempts to sabotage their campaign, to infiltrate with human people like double agents inside their campaign to sabotage them and ruin them. It goes back to something that she just said with Trace Gallagher on the set of Fox News, which is incredibly powerful and impactful. And I want to play it for you again in case you missed it.
I have to say there's only one party that has obstructed a fair election for us. And unfortunately, it was the Democratic Party. They've done everything they can, including creating PACs to prevent us from being able to have ballot access.
That's right. The election interference, the tampering with democracy, the enemies of the democratic process are the Democrats. The threat to democracy, the threat to our Constitution, the threat to free and fair elections are the Democrats. You throw RFK Jr. and Nicole Shanahan up at a rally with Trump communicating that to the voters, and on every television show they can get booked on communicating that, it blunts all of these false claims and accusations that Trump's the threat to democracy. They're living through it right now. Right? And they're not crazy MAGA fascists. For God's sake, he's the son of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Sr. Joe Biden has a bust of his father in the White House. Not to mention the fact that for purely political reasons, the Biden administration, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, refused to grant Secret Service protection to RFK Jr., even though he had multiple home invasions. He had to hire his own security to protect his life on the campaign trail. The man is a Kennedy, the most assassinated political family in American history. And he only got Secret Service protection after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which, by the way, proves that it was purely political. Okay, I guess now we'll give you Secret Service. Now that an actual bullet has whizzed by the skull of one of the candidates. So that's the other thing that makes this powerful. This isn't just RFK Jr., you know, angry or annoyed or frustrated because he couldn't get traction. No, he's pissed. And he knows exactly who's to blame, and he wants to crush them. And that's the kind of an energy that a campaign could use. Now, what does this do to the election? Well, I've been telling you for quite some time that if you're looking at polls, and to be honest, you know, the polls right now, this early on, and we're not even at Labor Day, it's still a fluid situation. But if you are going to look at polls, don't look at the national polls because we don't elect presidents on a national basis. They're irrelevant. They're literally irrelevant. The only polls that matter are state by state, and most specifically in certain states: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and now suddenly Virginia. And when you look at the polls in those states, only look at the five-way race. Don't look at Trump versus Harris head to head. Why? Well, it's the same reason you don't look at national polls. A head-to-head Kamala Harris, Donald Trump poll is irrelevant, because the election is not going to be head-to-head Harris versus Trump. RFK Jr.'s name will be on the ballot. Jill Stein's name will be on the ballot. Cornel West's name will be on the ballot. So what happens when you look at these critical states and you look at the five-way race? Well, we'll swing over to Real Clear Politics right now. If you look right now in Wisconsin, the average shows that Kamala Harris is winning by 1.7%. Now, if you look at the actual numbers, 46 to 44. Look down the Trump column. His numbers have not really changed. And by the way, if you go back to when it was Biden, Trump's numbers basically stayed the same. All right. He has not lost support since Kamala Harris entered the race. What's happened is Kamala Harris has gotten more support than Biden had. And all of that support comes from this column right here, the Kennedy column. Kennedy right now is sitting at 5% in this race in Wisconsin. Kennedy throws his support, and let's say how many of his supporters decide to go to Trump if he throws his support to Trump? 75%? It's over. It's over in Wisconsin, 100%. Let's swing down to Georgia. Before we even get into Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, let's go to the other ones. Because here's the thing. If Trump wins all the states he won last time, plus he wins Georgia and Arizona, two states he lost last time, but he's trending much better now. Then after that, all he's got to do is pick up Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. All right, so we'll leave those three. We hit Wisconsin, but let's start with Georgia. Right now in Georgia, without Kennedy in the race, or with Kennedy in the race, he's up by about 2 points on average. All right. Kennedy represents 4% in the state of Georgia. He throws his support to Trump, it's over. It's not even close. Arizona, how's Arizona looking right now? Right now, it's basically a dead heat. Harris has a half a point. It's within the margin of error. But look at Kennedy in Arizona. Kennedy's sitting at close to 6 points. He throws his support and endorses Donald Trump. And by the way, key to that endorsement is the implicit understanding that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will have some position of influence in the Trump administration. We'll get to that in a minute. But obviously, that's what's going to be important, because the Kennedy supporters need to know that if they're voting for Trump, then their guy is going to have a seat at the table. Now, what that seat is and what he has to say, we saw from Nicole Shanahan what that might look like. What did she say? She said that what was important to them was children's health issues, right? And actually, you know what? I don't want to just go off the top of my head. Let's go back to it right away and say, here's what she said. You know, when Trace Gallagher said, so would you want to roll in the Trump administration? What would that look like? She was very specific about their priorities.
I think to that extent.
I would fully support it. I would fully support a strong partnership dedicated to this issue. A lot of people comment that in his first term, he didn't accomplish many of the things that mothers really were hoping he would do. Made some big mistakes around the pandemic. However, I think that he is sincere.
Yeah,
I do.
I think it's interesting because the National Review.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead too far. Let's go here.
Specifically.
Well, this idea of a unity party, an idea of us coming around these principles of fighting for liberty in this country, fighting for our children's health. We have the worst chronic health crisis in the world right now. Over 50% of children are diagnosed with some chronic disease.
All right, now let me tell you something. I'm a conservative Republican, and I am very wary of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because of his long history of radical climate change policies and politics. He hates fossil fuel. He hates oil. He hates gas. I don't want him to have any say with regard to our energy independence and our ability to drill, baby, drill. And I'm sure Trump isn't going to go on board with that stuff too. But that wasn't mentioned here. That wasn't mentioned here in any way whatsoever as a priority. What are the two priorities? Liberty, okay. And by the way, when RF Kennedy Jr. talks about liberty, he talks about not being forced to get a vaccine by the government. He talks about you having autonomy over your health decisions, right? And I'm on board with that. Aren't you on board with that? Okay. And then if you're talking about getting Kennedy involved in reformatting how Americans are treating our farmers and agriculture in this country so that we're not importing cattle and pork products from China or South America and agriculture from South America and create just like energy independence and agricultural independence in America. So we're not reliant on any countries for that sort of thing. And we get pharmaceuticals out of the business of diagnosing children who are just acting like kids and don't mean to be drugged up. If that's what she's talking about here, count me in. All right. So if the partnership is announced in such a way that these Kennedy supporters are told, yeah, he's going to have a seat at the table. And if your priorities are these priorities, then the only way to get it done is to vote for Trump. Well, it brings us back to Arizona, where it's a dead heat right now, but Kennedy's sitting at 6%. It's over. By the way, Nevada is also one of those states that Biden won last time. Right now, when you look at Nevada, Trump is up by 2.5 points on the average. I mean, Nevada seems like it's over right now for Kamala. That's why she came out, by the way, and said that she was on board with the no tax on tips thing as well. But look at Kennedy, again, sitting at 5%. If Kennedy endorses Trump in these key states, and it's understood by the Kennedy voters that he's going to have a seat at the table, Trump wins. Easy. Okay, so that clears the map, right? Now we're only left with 3 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Now, we already looked at Wisconsin really fast, just so a reminder. Right now, Harris is up by 1.5 points on the average. Kennedy's sitting at 5 points. Michigan, well, Michigan, right now, Harris has got a better lead, a little over 2 points, but look at Kennedy in Michigan, sitting at 6 points right now. Completely upends and changes the game in the state of Michigan. And over in Pennsylvania, Harris right now, according to these averages, sitting at 2 points. Kennedy just at 4 points. That's the difference. That's the difference in all of those states. And if they're serious about this and they roll this out right, who is Donald Trump? He's the master of the deal. He works out this deal, he wins. It's really that simple. Which brings me back to my dilemma. As a conservative Republican, do you want, for the sake of defeating Kamala Harris and getting Harris, Biden, Obama politics out of the White House and get Donald Trump back in there so he can do the things that he's promised to do, like resecure our border, deport illegal immigrants who have gotten in over the last several years, restore our national security, and tell Hamas, you either stand down or we'll obliterate you, end the nuclear deal with Iran once and for all, tell Russia that Europe is not going to touch any of their gas or oil anymore, thus defunding the entire war effort and getting us to be energy independent by drilling through the roof. Also investigating all of the corrupt government officials who have been tampering with our elections over the years, starting with those 51 intelligence experts who told us that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, and righting this ship back in the direction that America is supposed to be on. If gaining all of that means that you allow Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and some of his people into the government. Is that worth it? Is it worth the risk? Or do you roll the dice and you try to win outright without making a bargain with Kennedy? As a conservative, I'm torn. Because again, Kennedy's a radical. Go look at what he said in the past. He's got some good ideas, yes. But at his heart and soul, a little loopy. And I think that Trump can win outright anyway. Do you need that bargain? Well, the fact of the matter is, in other countries, this happens all the time. In parliamentary countries, where the majority in the major house of parliament ends up choosing their prime minister, like in Great Britain, like in Israel, Japan, Italy, other countries like that, where they don't actually have a head of state as their president, as their prime minister. This happens all the time. There is always a coalition government formed, as she put it, a unity party that is formed, where parties find enough in common where they come together and say, all right, we'll share power to a certain extent. Obviously, in this case, the Republicans would share the lion's share of power in the executive branch, but we will come together to win this election and have some kind of unification. This is the kind of thing that happens in other countries all the time. We're just not used to it here in America. I mean, is this what needs to be done to ensure, without a doubt, that Trump gets his second term and we finally have a chance to get back to normalcy in this country, especially considering the radical ideas Kamala Harris has already put forth? If you ask me today, as of right now, based on where things are headed, I say you make this deal. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I say you make this deal. I'd love to hear your opinion, by the way, because it matters more than anything. Go ahead and tell us in the comments wherever you're watching us today. Do you think it's worth it to let Kennedy have a seat at the table in the Trump administration to get his endorsement and his support and swing this election? By the way, Donald Trump was asked about this yesterday, and his answer, well, I mean, he's the master of the art of the deal, right? His answer was pretty good.
Can I ask you about RFK? Because just moments ago, his running mate said that they were considering endorsing you. Have you considered him for a role in the administration, and what role would that be?
Well, we haven't, but I would love that endorsement because I've always liked him.
Would you also consider putting him in the administration?
You're asking me a very unusual question. I haven't been asked that question yet. I like him a lot. I respect him a lot. I probably would if something like that would happen.
He'd consider it. He would. He would give him a role in the administration. And there's another fringe benefit to all of this that I haven't even mentioned, but I will now. Because again, I'm shocked. I've been thinking about this for the last 24 hours since this broke yesterday late afternoon. And it's a dilemma. It really is. And this is the kind of thing where you have to look at your grounded principles. You have to look at your North Star and you have to say, okay, what's the priority? What's the most important thing? Right now, keeping Kamala Harris from the Oval Office is, in fact, the most important thing. But there's also one other fringe benefit that I hesitate to mention because I don't want it to spoil this thing. Because I feel like it's, it's Christmas time. And if you mention the present that you really want, it'll jinx it. But I'm going to say it. If this were to happen, if RFK Jr., the darling, he even looks like Bobby Kennedy, the darling of Hollywood elites. Hollywood loves RFK Jr. He's married to an actress, for God's sake. He lives in Hollywood. He's feted by that. If RFK Jr. throws down with MAGA and is part of a coalition government where he's up on stage saying that the Democrats are the threat to this democracy, that they're the tyrannical ones and they're the threat to the future of this country, it will drive the media, the political left, the cultural left, the late night comedians and talk shows, Hollywood writ large, academia and college professors. It will drive them insane. That George Stephanopoulos' head will literally explode on television when he has to announce this news report. And honestly, I think that's the top reason why I want this to happen. So we'll see. We shall see. Seriously, though, I'd love to hear your reaction. What do you think? Is this going to happen? Do you want this to happen? Is this a good idea? If you're advising Donald Trump, what do you tell him right now? Should he be on the phone with RFK right now, working out the deal? Let us know in the comments.